Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at Into the Absurd. I'm your host, Tina Brock, and for the next 50 minutes, we will explore with our guest, Christopher Munden today, what's on his mind as we roll into 2021. And I'll get to introducing Chris in just a couple of seconds, but want to say thank you so much to everybody who's tuned in here on Zoom. Thanks for being with us over this time. And we look forward to your questions in the chat box today for Chris. And if you're coming in on Facebook Live, thank you very, very much for making time for us today for the next 50 minutes. We look forward to hearing from you as well. And for everybody who has been helping us through this journey since June to get into 2021, it's been such a joy to have you here with these conversations as we explore the hearts and the minds and the thoughts of creators and independent thinkers as we move into 2021. And we're really excited about and want to invite you to find us on Into the Absurd podcast, which we just launched and getting back episodes up and ready. So on your favorite platform, you can find us there at Into the Absurd. On today's show, Christopher Munden. Chris is the editor of FringeArts, which is the arts and theater independent publication here in online publication here in Philadelphia. And he is also a co-founder of the Kensington Soccer Club. He's a writer in Philadelphia and has worked for many different organizations. And I am very delighted to talk to Chris about what he's thinking about as we move into 2021, founding FringeArts, and just like what life is like for Chris Munden. So Chris, welcome to Into the Absurd.
Hello.
Hello. You're looking very yellow today.
The background, I hope.
Yeah,
yes.
I like it. It's nice and bright. Thanks for being here today, Chris. I guess the best place to begin, I know I'm interested, and I'm guessing people are, is let's go back to Chris growing up, Chris in England. And I want to know just a little bit about where you were born and what that was like.
Being born?
The being born part.
Rude awakening. I was
an existential quandary.
Yes. And it's been downhill since. No. I was born in Newcastle upon Tyne, England, which is northeastern England, and I grew up mostly in Northumberland, which is a northeasternmost county just next to the Scottish border. It's a beautiful area, and had a pretty, in retrospect, like idyllic childhood. One of the first place I remember living was right opposite Warkworth Castle, which is castle where Henry IV Part II begins, Duke of Northumberland's residence, and parents had a bed and breakfast house, and then across the street from that was a cow pasture, and then a cricket ground, or maybe the other way around, and then the castle. And my sister and I could just play. We had like freedom of the village and could play in the castle grounds. And then we moved to a larger town, Alnwick, which is, there's also a large castle in Alnwick. It's where early Harry Potter movies were filmed, the backdrop, and Blackadder Part 1, if you've ever seen that. And that is the current residence or country residence of the Duke of Northumberland, and also a beautiful town. I spent the first 13 years of my life in England.
So was it a pretty small, would you call it a village? Do you
so Newcastle is a city where I was born, quite a large-ish city. Warkworth is certainly a village, and Alnwick is a town, and those are like legal definitions of places. Yeah.
So what did you and your sister do when you were kids? Did you just go like storm the castle, or just?
I certainly remember. I mean, yeah, we had. It's now like a trust property and you have to pay to enter. But when I was a kid, you couldn't go in the keep, but you could go in the grounds. And even when it was closed, you could go sit on the walls outside, and there was a little area. But yeah, they had like cellars you could go to, ruined parts you could climb on. It's a mostly ruined castle, but yeah, we played there a lot. And along the river, there's a hermitage nearby, and it's a fairly small town a few miles from the sea. So yeah, it was a great place to play, great playground.
Oh, it sounds really magical. And your parents were running a bed and breakfast at the time?
When we lived there, yeah, they did.
Mm-hmm. So did you help in the bed and breakfast?
I probably hindered in the bed and breakfast. I would guess.
Did your mom try to get rid of you guys?
Did
you live there in the bed in the same?
Yeah, so my sister and I had rooms, and then we rented out some of the spare rooms, and we had a lot of like long-term lodgers. There was a Australian guy who came close with, who lived there, and I think a Scottish guy, but also temporary residents too.
Oh, that seems wonderful. So you had some long-term stays and then some people that would come through.
Mm-hmm.
You think that growing up with that kind of a background influenced literature, like what you became interested in terms of literature?
I mean, certainly my parents were influenced on that, but I think I had a deep love of history as a kid, and so, and I'm sure probably the setting had something to do with that. My parents were involved in like amateur dramatics. I remember the castle across the street every 3, 4, 5 years, some amount of years, would have these big theater things that took place in the castle that were like historical projects, historical setting, like a Viking invasion or Anglo-Saxon invasion, and my father would act in them, and we would have like bit parts in them too.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so what did you think about the acting part of it?
I never did too much acting as a kid, but yeah, I loved the theater from an early age.
So how did you then find your way to the US?
My father worked for a company, he was in pharmaceuticals, that was bought by Kodak Eastman when they were growing a pharmaceutical business. And we moved when I was in junior high school to upstate New York, to Albany, New York.
Oh, interesting. And where did you end up going to school?
Well, so I went to school a couple of years there, and then I spent my last 2 years of high school. I went to a school in Philadelphia suburbs, Upper Dublin High School in Fort Washington. Yeah.
What was Albany like?
It's a state capital. It's a pretty small city, 200,000 people, and we were in kind of American suburbs of it. I remember more the trips we took from that. So we went skiing a lot, and up to the mountains, and that there were beautiful areas around Albany, I recall.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I think most recently I was thinking of it because of the whole Keith Raniere thing. Do you know that? Yeah, there's this whole, sort of long story cult issue that sort of placed itself in Albany.
Oh, brilliant!
It was on HBO recently. There was sort of a retrospective of like what that was about. Where did you go skiing?
I started skiing when we were still in England. My mother was a special ed teacher and would take her class to a dry ski slope. So basically, I don't know, what do you call it?
Like what's a
Like
dry?
artificial ski slope, like an
Oh,
artificial
oh,
surface, not
okay.
even like artificial snow, but an artificial surface.
Mm-hmm.
So we skied then and then in Scotland and on the continent. And then when I moved to Albany, I skied a lot. We went to a place in Western Massachusetts a lot, and to the places in um, downstate New York and upstate New York and New England.
Did you play a lot of sports when you were? I want to get to the Kensington Soccer Club and talking about sports and everything, but like when you were a child, did you participate in a lot of organized sports, or
My
did
father
that
was
come later?
always really sportive. I played soccer, I played tennis, and I swam. And I was never brilliant at either, but I swam and I played soccer through high school.
Do you think the participation part of it is I mean, having learned it and done it, is that what led you to want um, to,
I
your,
mean, yeah, I love soccer. Sorry to cut you off.
no, 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 go ahead.
I love soccer. I liked playing it when I played it, and I loved watching it. Newcastle United is my team, Philadelphia Union, um, and I was in Pentreaty Park playing ultimate frisbee with some friends. I think I was probably wearing a Newcastle United shirt. And in any case, a friend now, Jim Hardy, came up to me. He was looking for coaches to help him with a new soccer club. And so I came out um, and that was 10 years ago. And I've been coaching since pretty much.
And so you guys got together, and did you
I
did
wouldn't
you have a
say,
vision of what you wanted it to be at the time, or did it evolve over the years?
yeah, both. So Jim is a high school teacher. He had been like an organizer in environmental organizer and organizer in education. And he knew he wanted to do some kind of community organizing in the community he taught in, which was Kensington. And soccer, he was a high school soccer coach, but he saw that there were really no opportunities for kids to play soccer outside of that school opportunity. And saw soccer as like a great tool for social outreach, for community building, and to be a real part of the neighborhood. And so that was always an intention, but what that means and how that's done is realized along over the years as
Mm-hmm.
opportunities arise.
Do you think that there's something specific about soccer as a sport that lends itself in a different way to the
I,
outreach and the development?
I do. I think not that it couldn't be done with other sports, but that soccer is particularly suited to it. It is an easy sport to play, played throughout the world. It is simple. You don't need too much equipment. Those first times going out to the field when we first began, it was almost just like a bag of balls and some cones.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't have much, didn't need much. But um, it's also, I think it's great for like kids, for people to play, because it's not like some sports where it's very directed. It's very much like you're almost like pawns moving along. It's very much, you need to make individual decisions. You need to take personal responsibility on the field, but it's also working within a team environment. And you do have a coach, you do have opportunity for mentoring people. So yeah, I think it's a great sport for it.
It also feels as having watched it and played a little bit when I was in high school myself, that it's a less, for lack of a better word, aggressive sport. I mean, I know it can be, but I mean, it certainly can be. And I think, but when I think of, say, injury that might be a part of, say, playing football or the contact of it, and it may just be because I'm idealizing it to some degree and realizing that there's a, you know, it can be there can be a lot more contact than you think, but I wonder if that isn't part of it too, that
I mean, we were able to do in the fall a kind of socially distanced soccer, which maybe wouldn't be possible with some sports. But no, it's a physical sport. It's an athletic sport. Uh, yeah.
yeah, no, it definitely feels quite athletic and quite physical, but somehow when I watch it, it isn't, I get
I mean,
maybe
compared to
perhaps it's
football,
what's
compared to
that?
gridiron, compared
Right,
to
compared to
American football,
football. Right,
yeah,
right. Maybe not. I mean, I
or
think
compared to cricket or baseball, perhaps.
right, right. And I also feel like it's a lot easier for me to enjoy watching because I can actually see, you know, I can actually see the upper
They call
body
it
and the face of, you know,
they call it the beautiful game. It's a
it is,
performance. It's balletic. It
yeah.
can be really beautiful to watch.
It does feel much more like watching a dance in some ways than the crunching of bodies up against one another. Have there been surprises along the way personally in growing the organization over the last, how has it been, how long
It's
has it
10
been?
years. It
10 years
was
now?
2009, 10, right around then. It's been rewarding to see it grow from very humble beginnings to you know, we have board, we have staff members, we have lots of coaches, we come in contact with hundreds of kids every year, and seeing like kids who were teenagers or younger become coaches, graduate from high school, and then become adults and yeah, mentors themselves. That's been beautiful.
That's a big part of the program, is developing coaches and leaders from within the players that
That's
are
correct.
interested in doing that and giving
Yes,
them that responsibility.
exactly. Most of the people we actually hire, we volunteer run and rely a lot on volunteers, but most of the people we hire are people from Kensington, North Philly, from who people who, if they didn't play with us, are from the same background and neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think you all might be able to get back to the field? I mean, I guess that's a really hard call, but in a sort of masked situation, have you been talking about that at all? It's a little premature, but
Yeah,
it would
I
seem
mean,
like it's a sport where maybe you could do that.
in the suburbs where it's like pay to play and they rely on the money, they will be getting back to the field in the spring. I have no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
We you know, it's a non-profit. We're a non-profit. We don't. We're concerned about the community and the health of people. So with
Sure.
that
Yeah.
consideration, it may be longer until we do
Sure.
so.
Yeah, I do think just sort of more broadly about outdoor things and the way in which, but then there's just, you're going to be in close contact no matter how you do it, even if you are outdoors. So that those are hard considerations, I think, for everybody right now. Jim Hardy wants to say to you that meeting Chris was the luckiest moment of his life.
Oh,
which is really beautiful. And Julia, soccer taught me patience. It takes so darn long to score, dang long to score a dang goal. I loved playing. Just I used to play with a bunch of kids, you know, in high school, and I don't know, it was so much fun. I think it was like ballroom meets, I don't know, you know,
yeah. I mean,
track and field meets.
it's I spent. I mean, you asked what my sister and I did as children. We spent a lot of time playing soccer in the street, soccer in fields with tennis balls, you know, with whatever was around, tennis balls and two sweaters.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun. And I think like ideally you try and communicate that just street level fun to the kids.
Mm-hmm. Just also the focus and agility that it seems to be, you know, like any sport, it's a great place to put the mind and to focus it. Let's talk a little bit about Findy and when the idea came about to you that Findy needed to happen. And Findy is an independent arts, I'm sure everybody knows, but for those who don't, an independent arts.
So I always loved the theatre as long as I can remember, going to the theatre, reading plays, loved Shakespeare. And I was working as a copy editor for a magazine, a tourist magazine in Philadelphia. And I think it was Interact Theatre sent like free tickets, a mailing, free tickets for one of their shows to the magazine. And editor asked, "Does anyone want these?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want them." And so went and I came to the realization they'll give you free theatre tickets if you write about theatre. So I started writing about theatre and realized I enjoyed criticism, but this is like early 2010s, and you know the amount of print space is just dropping precipitously. So there's a bunch of Inquirer reviewers, and they're not going anywhere. City Paper and Philly Weekly, and not still around, but when you know their print space was dropping, and their critics were struggling to find anywhere to write. I had written for some blogs, some other sites, and some of those were folding. I think for Broad Street Review, and the week I wrote the first article for them, the editor had this article that was kind of rapey about a journalist in the Egypt protests who was assaulted, and he blamed what she was wearing. It's just like, so I wanted to start my own site, and I didn't want it to be like a personal blog. That didn't interest me. So I took like all the things that I had written for various defunct sites, and from a blog they ran, I had my friend Josh McIlvaine. He had done this short-lived performing arts blog site, and I took everything from that. So I started the site with like 100 articles, and just here it is. I didn't announce it, just started to put my criticism there. And that's how it started.
At the time, did you know that you wanted it to focus on reviewing, that you wanted it to be, I mean, you said you didn't want it to be a blog, so
I know I didn't want it to be that, and I thought about naming it. I had the URL like Filler Theatre, something like that. I didn't want to make it that focused. I had written before on like museums. I'd done like museum exhibit reviews. I'd done like food reviews, music reviews. So I thought that it would be different performing arts. I had three things I really wanted to do that I needed a forum for. One was like micro reviews. I called them 60-second reviews. And I had this idea that I could then like license them to some print publication for free, just putting like Findy on it. I wanted to do a podcast, and I wanted to do these like Zagat style reviews, like restaurant, you know, quoting different reviewers in my own take on theater or other art. And I don't do any of those anymore, but those were the three things I wanted a forum for initially.
And do you not do those because other aspects grew and blossomed more and you just needed to focus on on
Well,
longer reviews and
you know, it's hard to write a short review. It's hard to be concise, and so I started to post my reviews. And the first review I posted, a theater company put that in their marketing stuff, quoted it, and put Findy. I was like, wow. And then people started to ask to write for me, to write for the site, and there was kind of what they wanted to do, and it's hard. It was hard to do the Zagat reviews because I was saying there was decreasing amount of criticism, so oftentimes there was no one else reviewing a show. So how are you going to do that?
mm-hmm.
And the podcast took a long time to put together.
The podcast that you all
we only did 3 or 4 episodes. It was myself and John Rosenberg. We interviewed various people in independent Philadelphia theater, as we called it.
Yeah. But you all fairly recently, right, since the pandemic began, started Chosen by Committee, which is the podcast that we'll make sure we post the link up there, which definitely check it out if you all have not. I was telling John, I tuned into the latest one this morning about aptly Long Day's Journey into Night, and it was so much fun. If talking about as much fun as talking about Long Day's Journey into Night can be, but you all do such a nice job with it. So Josh Herren, who's a writer for you, right, for Findy, and John Rosenberg, who we know is a playwright and also a man of many talents. Who came up with the idea and explain the idea? I didn't explain the idea well, but it's
a pretty esoteric podcast, to be honest.
That's the best part of it.
We are reading every play that won the Pulitzer Prize for drama. And it's kind of like a book club. We read a play every week or two, and we talk about the play, and we record our conversation. It was Josh's idea. He had mentioned it to me, I think, the first time we ever met, that he'd had this idea kicking around for like a decade, that he wanted to read all of those plays. He was going to do like a blog or something about it, but he thought a podcast would be good, having no experience doing podcasts. And so, yeah, I guess, March, when everything's closed, we're all stuck in our houses, he thought that would be a good time to begin it.
And is that the latest one, the Long Day's Journey episode?
I think we've had at least 1 or 2 since then.
Okay.
Yeah, but that is one of the latest episodes. There's some really quite bad plays written in the 1920s, 30s, to be honest, and astounding that they get the Pulitzer.
I remember the conversation about one of the Elmer Rice plays that won. I think
that was a good one.
Yeah, it was a fun conversation.
That's a great play. Yeah. Street
Scene, right? We considered doing that show at one point, and I was like, I really want to hear them talk about. But
when you get to like the 40s, 50s, there's some amazing American plays in that period. Really, maybe height of American drama. I'd be interested to see how they are in the succeeding decades, but there've been some brilliant plays that we've read recently. Tennessee Williams, who you've done, and Arthur Miller.
Well, I know when you got into the what's that? Sorry, I interrupted.
Inge. You did. You did.
We did Gnadiga's Fraulein. We did Comeback Little Shiva was Inge, but we did of Williams. We've done Gnadiga's Fraulein, which is just crazy, very out there. And then we, of course, we did Eccentricities, and we did A Lovely Sunday for Crevecoeur at one point. We did a reading of that play. But are you surprised when you come together at your opinions?
Yeah.
Do you surprise each other a lot?
I was sometimes we disagree. I feel like, I mean, maybe everyone thinks that, but that my opinions are often somewhat middle of the road. Sometimes a play is great, sometimes it's clearly not very good, but more often it's this is good or fair. And then it's whether John and Josh are like, this is an amazing play. I'm like, well, so these drawbacks are, John will be very adamant this is the worst play ever. Like, it's not.
The soundbite of him talking about Long Day's Journey into Night was just funny. And then you jumped in and you're like, have you ever seen it on stage? You know, which it's a, you know, many people have not. It's a very long play, you know, but that part of the conversation, I mean, the whole thing was really fun. But
I was surprised by that reaction because I mean,
his point is, he's like, I don't want to spend time around these people. I don't care about these people. I don't. And then you know, thoughtfully came in with the, yes, but we all have our problems, and there are people, yeah, just the different ways in which you all found your way into the conversation is as illuminating.
It's
about
been
three
a great
friends.
experience.
Yeah. Has it taught you a lot about them as friends, even though you know them well? Do you learn still?
I mean, John was a close personal friend and still is before this. Josh I'd met a few times. I would now call him a close personal friend, even though I've only still met him just a few times because it's mostly been during the pandemic. But yeah, it's great having a weekly or at least every 2 week conversation with them and text message chain. It's been a really great experience the last 10 months. Yeah,
it is. It's nice for people to have somewhere to land and to have the same people there, you know, these three, you all at the table. Do you feel, what is it about discussing plays that you think is illuminating about people's personalities?
you mean about the how we read the plays?
How you read them, and then I guess maybe that's certainly wasn't a well phrased question, but I mean, like, what was interesting is to hear John say, you know, it's like, no, I just can't, no, and no on this play, you know, and then you guys got into a conversation about, he used as an example, Death of a Salesman, how you're rooting for each of the people. And I guess I'm so curious as to how our views about art, and I guess it's really about the characters, show us, you know, reveal to us more about who we are to each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, right. We could say criticism sometimes tells you more about the critic than it does about the artwork, for sure. And how the three of us perceive the plays, what we draw out of them. There are times when we're all on the same page, and you can tell there are some plays that just like, it's hard to say anything but this is a great play, or alternatively, it's hard to say anything but this just doesn't quite work. But I think what we bring into the plays, our experiences, makes a big difference. I like the absurdity of life, and I like the tragedy and the people being terrible. I appreciate that. I find beauty in ugliness.
I think those are the words you used in the podcast, something to that effect. That there's just beauty in this just all out train wreck situation. Do you think that if John had seen the play, he would feel differently?
Well, I asked that question because I was, I guess, surprised by his reaction. I think I didn't like reading it as much as Tennessee Williams, who just the experience of reading him, his language is so beautiful, his like stage directions, it's almost like it's an experience seeing it on stage, but it's an experience reading it. It's beautiful. I didn't quite get that with Long Day's Journey. So I'm trying to think like, but I think it's a great play. Partially why is that? And so it's interesting reading the plays. You have to kind of create the production in your head. And I think having had that experience did make it easier for me to enter and to appreciate what is great about that play.
So you all are up to, is it 1950? Well, you said there might be one or two after that. So you're hovering somewhere around the 60s now, early?
I think we're entering like 1960 now, maybe 59, 60, somewhere there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you all read the play every week and then you get together. And do you edit the show at all? Or do you just take it?
Josh edits it. It's oftentimes he's just like, right, I am putting that up as it is. Sometimes we meander, sometimes we swear or we say things that perhaps we don't want going out to a general audience. And Josh will edit it down some, but we try and make it so that he can just put it, record, play, post.
Well, I think the sense, I had just a very strong sense of you all being in the same room, even though I know quite well you're not, and I was saying to you before, the ambient sounds of somebody making a drink, or I don't know, the ice cubes clinking in the glass, whatever the beverage is, and the cat meowing in the background are all very nice added, I'm sure not deliberate touches, but really make it fun. And I think because you all have such a lovely relationship, it seems it really comes through, which is so fascinating that you're not sitting. I want to go back to something that you said before about in a review, or the question about how your conversations with each other reveal something about, and you say sometimes, like as a reviewer, it reveals more about the reviewer. The review reveals a lot about the reviewer. When you write about a production, do you ever check yourself that way? I mean, do you say to yourself, wait, okay, this is just too much of me coming in right now, or do you just let it fly?
Probably both. Yeah, you have to accept that your opinion is subjective, but also have confidence in your opinion. So I think that's one thing I would tell young writers who want to write criticism is like, have confidence that what you say is worth saying, and that you're intelligent, and that you know theater and have something worthwhile to say about it. But you also want to examine your prejudices and your preconceived notions, and you want to make the review about the work, not about the reviewer.
Have you had a situation, or do you ahead of time exclude yourself from a certain type of theater or a production? Like, how do you manage that?
I don't like musicals, and so I don't see musicals. I don't review musicals. I don't like improv, so I wouldn't review an improv show. Otherwise, I've learned more. I feel like I can tell more from reading a company's marketing copy whether I will like this play or not. And for years, I just wanted to see as much theater as I could, and everything, and just ingest everything. And now I think I try and see plays. I think I go into a play hoping that thinking I will like it, and I go into every play hoping I will like it. I think you have to have a great love of theatre to be a theatre critic. Yeah.
It seems as though you would have to, seeing as many shows as you all see.
I think that's something that people miss about critics. I would say people who work in the theatre and maybe criticize theatre critics, they perhaps fail to appreciate how much we love theatre. To go see all your mediocre productions, to spend night after night there, you have to really love theatre. You have to know how powerful it can be, and know how meaningful and effective it can be. And so when you say, right, negative criticism that, when you say that you don't like the play, you are writing from a place of, I know how amazing this medium can be, and that fell short.
Do you think in general that criticism is absorbed and by producing, by directors, by producers, and is a vehicle for change? I mean, in Philadelphia, have you over the years?
No, I would say not. I think that perhaps ideally it would be, and I maybe could have been more of an advocate for the type of theatre that I like, and have and pushed for that more. But I think, people have their visions, people know what they want to do, and I feel like too often someone who's in the theatre company, in the theatre industry, so to speak, they want a review as a piece of marketing copy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I hear your cat.
Yeah, this is Walter Cat. He's crying.
Oh, his name's Walter?
Walter, yeah.
He needs to meet Martin, who's doing the same thing. He's just not he's just not meowing right now. He's objecting to the part about people not using the criticism. Oh. Your sister is very fortunate to have you as your brother, and says her daughter is so fortunate to have as an uncle. His compassion and kindness really shine in all he does, and I think
yeah.
Only knowing you from afar, I would say that definitely comes through. She wants to know, what book should we all read next?
The last two books I read were John le Carre book. John le Carre, the spy writer who just died. I think he's worth picking up. And a book by Julian Barnes, who wrote Sense of an Ending and Flaubert's Parrot. And I would recommend. And he also writes detective fiction. So I would recommend either of those authors.
I'm going to stay on Findy for just a little bit. How many years has it been now? 10?
It was 2012, maybe.
2012. Okay, so you're going up on 10 years. And are you editor-in-chief, publisher? Yeah. Tell me a little bit about
this. I think it started just me. In the early year, I had an editor, Julius Ferraro. You probably remember him, and had like a whole cadre of reviewers, maybe, I don't know, 8 to 15 going on, and doing all kinds of stuff. That was a lot of work. I feel like maybe, other sites arrived. DC Metro Arts came and went. Wendy Rosenfeld, she was editor of Broad Street Review and really made that into like a substantial theatre reviewing site. So there was a time when I felt like if Findy didn't review a play, then maybe it wouldn't get reviewed. I don't necessarily feel that way now. I do less outreach. I'm very much like, people want to write, feel like they have something to say, and this is a platform where they can say it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've been pretty quiet the last 10 months.
Sure, but still putting articles out and still publishing.
Yeah.
Do you feel, I guess, I'm getting back to a point you made before. I do think there was clearly a time in Philadelphia where, as a small theater company, there just wasn't enough to go around, and there weren't enough publications. So clearly, we wouldn't be here. I really definitely don't think we would be here if other people hadn't found out about the organization, and that's through the, Findy and Broad Street and City Paper before, and a number of those publications that came along. So I think it is really germane to the survival of a lot of organizations. We were talking before the show just about how this readjustment of how we get back on what that landscape will be, how we feel about our own theater going and performing arts, what we want to see, the kinds of things we want to review, the kinds of things we want to make, the kinds of things we want to do. I just feel like it's almost starting again.
I think it's an opportunity to reflect. So, I had ideas when I started Findy. I'm sure you did when you started IRC. But at a certain point, I remember meeting a playwright at a bar, I think, and he knew Findy, and he asked why I did Findy, and I paused, and he said, because you've been doing it. Like, that's a lot of the reason. A lot of the reason we do things is because we've been doing them. And for me, I lost the ability to go to the theater. I lost coaching soccer and being around that community. And it's rediscovering or finding ways that you can cope with this world otherwise. And maybe going forward, it'll be, it's like re-examine, why am I doing this, and find like an actual reason to do it. That's what I hope when I re-enter, when I start doing things. I hope it'll be more consciously and things I really want to be doing.
Walter says,
hooray. Walter says what
hooray,
I should be doing.
He seconds that.
Yeah, he is dissatisfied when he only has half a dish of food, and if I just went and put like a few pieces in it, he would be
okay. Well, if you need to do that, you can do that. Martin's done the same thing, right? He knows when this show is happening every week, and it suddenly becomes, it's been just an extraordinary, it's been an extraordinary couple of years, and certainly a very difficult last week, where a very dear colleague of yours, Henrik Egger, passed very unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And
I would like to say, yeah, Henrik started writing for Findy. I looked, and it was 2012, his first article. So he's been writing for a long time. I probably knew him before through the theater, and I published his last article the day he went into hospital, December 30th, and he had emergency surgery from which he never recovered. Henrik, Shakespeare's Anthony says, like, the evil is buried with us. What is it? No, evil lives on, the good is often interred. And you find that generally it's the opposite, and we remember people as saints. And I want to, Henrik was was a saint in some ways, but he was a character, and he could be difficult, and he was large, and he was inescapable, and just a very peculiar and singular person who I became close with. He came to family Christmases, and I spoke with him the day before he went to hospital. I spoke with him this past Christmas, and I feel his absence just intensely. Yeah.
Yeah, he was always extraordinarily supportive in the way that I think your publication, chose to, there's certain people in the audience who are, who are just for particularly for small organizations, I think, who are champions of that work, champions in the best sense of the word, where they're supportive. So even if it isn't the best show you've done, or even if it, whatever the thing is that you're putting up on the stage, it's that person being there that has faith in you. And that's extraordinary in a theater community, I think. And we've lost quite a few, the IRC has personally over these last couple of months, of those, and you feel it so viscerally. I think Henrik is, his uniqueness in terms of his enthusiasm for things, and just this childlike sort of curiosity that he brought to the table a lot. I mean, he reminded me of just, your favorite uncle that just never ran out of energy.
He never ran out of energy, and he never ran out of optimism. And yeah, he was very generous in his support. He said things to me I didn't deserve, and he was always so kind in his words. I'll miss that presence for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing about these times, the Tennyson line, like, much is taken, much abides. I think we have like this idea of things going back to how they were before, and time has moved, and time will go on, and there will be things that are missing when I go back to the theater for the first time, and there's an opening night performance, and Henrik's not there, and not there, and not there. That will be one of those things.
Yeah.
Could we leave on a happier note?
Well, I just wanted to express, so many thanks, because he was extraordinary to me personally, and my son, you both, giving Liam an opportunity to write when he was in between those years, and just that sort of sense of really nurturing people along.
Yeah.
Was extraordinary. Yeah, what are you thinking about what are you thinking about?
What am I thinking about? Okay.
How's that for a big, wide soccer field of a question? I can narrow it down a little.
Perhaps.
Yeah. I'll help you out. That was just not fair. Although I do think it's kind of an interesting question. Like, when you get up, how have you found yourself putting your focus?
I think I've hinted at some of those. So I have been thinking about like what abides, what we have, and I have been thinking about myself in some ways. So, like, the isolation has been tough, and I set out my life to be, fine, kind of isolated, but that depended on on these very social activities of theater and soccer. And so I have been doing stuff that are fulfilling differently. I've been reading a lot, reading those plays, that podcast, watching movies, TVs. I started to play guitar again, doing yoga again, things that playing tennis again, and pickleball, newly found, things that are more personal and fulfilling in that way.
Do you think it's fair to say that you will be more resonant on many levels from having done that thinking through being isolated?
I think we don't know how we'll be. I think we'll be surprised, and I think it's going to be an unexpected year. I think we'll discover things, and then as things open up, that in a way that we discovered things when things closed down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That feels positive.
Okay.
That feels optimistic, I think. Well, Walter definitely wants to eat. So
Walter wants something.
Walter wants your attention. So Chris Munden, thank you so much for taking time to allow us to take a quick 50-minute journey from what sounds like a pretty beautiful childhood through the work you're doing now. I look forward to.
It was an honor. It made me feel good that you wanted to talk to me and you thought people would want to hear, and it was a fun conversation. So thank you very much.
Of course. Well, thank you for everything you've done over the years, and we'll have this conversation again after not this conversation, but when a year from now, or however long it takes us to get back. I'd be interested to see, to revisit some of these things that we're going to have to go through.
Okay.
And see where. In the meantime, everybody tune into Chosen by Committee. We put the links up there, and visit Chris, and you can also see a lot of Henrik's work over on the Findy website. So, Chris, thank you so much, and be well.
I will go take care of Walter. Bye, Tina.
He's holding court. Bye. Thanks so much to everybody who's joined us today for this conversation. And I hope you'll be here next Saturday when Jill Harrison joins us. Jill is the executive director and founder of the Directors Gathering here in Philadelphia. And we'll talk to Jill about many productions that she's directed, including one that is coming up for Jacqueline Goldfinger and Jackie's play Babel for Passage Theater Company. And Jill has a long history of working for Playwrights Horizons up in New York City and the New York Theater Workshop. So it's going to be a fun conversation. That'll be next Saturday at 5 p.m. here on Into the Absurd. And until then, just wishing you a very safe and a very healthy week ahead. And thanks for being here.